I have given a name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham.
You don't really think you'll win, do you? I'm Batman.
You are listening to episode 119 of the Batman on Film podcast. Batman on Film, authoritative, definitive, the original. I can't do the dadgum, Pete, because FYI, Pete Verra is here with me.
I can give you a little dadgum if you need it.
Give us a dadgum, because it is 20 years of Batman on Film. We just celebrated yesterday, and there's still more to come this whole year. So give me some of that. Give me some of that dadgum. All right.
Authoritative, definitive, the dadgum original.
Sucker. Okay. Well, I'm excited that you are on this show with me, Pete, because we have a very special guest. And so, Pete, I'm glad you're here, but I'm way more excited, no offense, Pete, that Bryan Edward Hill's here, and he is going to be starting a Detective Comics run with 983. But first, I wanted to talk about what got me interested in you was your Be Like Batman campaign you started. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with the Denver Children's Hospital and how that came to be?
Thanks, Justin. Well, it was actually pretty organic. It just kind of happened naturally. I talked to a lot of readers and fans and folks on Twitter, and I was asking about charitable organizations because for some time now I've been thinking about doing charity initiatives associated with some of the books that I write. Like, how do you give something back, right?
Yeah.
And a fellow reached out to me on DM. I keep my DMs open. And he was like, well, I had this... this little tragedy kind of happened in my family, but the, Denver Children's Hospital, this organization, Kid Street, they really stepped up and, they made things a lot better, so you consider them. So I looked them up. I had my wife look them up, and she gave them a call, and they seemed on the up and up and really cool people. Children's charities matter a lot to me because, I think what happens to children happens to all of us. So I was like, okay, let's see if we can raise some money for this. So my wife actually had the plan. So she was like, well, Bryan, what you can do is you can start a GoFundMe page for the charity. And then if people donate, $5 to the GoFundMe page, then if you can send them a free issue of Detective Comics signed by you. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. So she set it up because I'm completely incompetent at doing any of that stuff. And I set it up and I cleared it with DC, and DC was cool with it. And I just used Twitter. Like, I just put a tweet out and said, hey, I'm starting this Be Like Batman, hashtag Be Like Batman thing. If anyone donates $5 or more to the GoFundMe page, you're promised a signed issue of the first issue of my Detective Comics arc. And like random people will get some goodies that are just kind of around my home office, because I got comps from other stuff that I've written. I've got stuff. So, I'll just jam stuff in envelopes and sort of clean out my closet, Eminem style.
Nice.
And send things to sorry, mama, didn't mean to hurt you. I'll just kind of send things off to people, and my goal was to raise $500.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if we raise $500, I will personally match the $500, and we'll send $1,000 over to Kid Street, right? Cool. And we crossed that $500 threshold in like 2 hours or something. Wow. And it kind of got up, I think got up to like 800 or something like that by the time it was all said and done. So I'm going to go ahead and match that and send that over. The only reason why I cut it off is I only had a certain amount of issues. I only had 100 issues. Yeah. So at 100 issues, $5 a piece, 500. I don't want people donating and not being able to get a book. So that was that whole thing. And as I go forward, if I do, more stuff with DC or other places even, I'm always going to try to tie something charitable into what I'm doing, because I'm a huge proponent of living by the ethics of the characters that you write, unless you're writing The Punisher or don't do that. But like,
oh, man.
I mean, maybe not in like every case. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Your mileage may vary on Frank Castle, but like,
yeah.
If you're doing something like Batman, like or Superman or Spider-Man or something,
yeah.
I think it's a real bummer if you're a reader, to read a character, you love the character, you go to like Twitter or something, and then you look up the writer, and the writer is just complaining for 4 hours. You know, like that sucks. Like that's not the experience you want. I look at writing like a service industry, especially when you're writing something like Batman, right? Like I've written controversial things, man. I've got some intense stuff that's coming out that I can't talk about yet. All that's not going to make everyone feel good. But when I write something like Batman, I might take you through an experience, but ultimately you're supposed to leave that experience with more than what you went in, right? So, it started real naturally, and I'm really appreciative. If anyone's listening to this that did donate, thank you very much. You made me very happy. You've already made Kid Street very happy. You've already made children very happy. Make sure, if you did donate, that you emailed your address to belikebatman@gmail.com. Because if I don't have your address, I don't know where to send your book. Okay, so make sure you do that. And yeah, let's look for more things like that in the future. I'll probably do some local stuff too. Like when the book comes out, I'll probably do some local stuff, maybe give some issues away to kids here, visit some schools, maybe visit some hospitals here in the LA area where I live right now, and try to do some stuff.
Nice. What shop is your local shop out in?
Oh yeah, my local shop is a shop called Quest. It's I live in downtown LA because I'm doing the best I can to live like an 80s cop hero. And I've done a pretty good job. You know, I mean, I can certainly feel it in the air tonight, oh Lord. So
Hey.
Wow.
do you remember?
Man.
Shop called Quest is my favorite shop. So, because it's in walking distance, that's all it takes. Is how lazy can I be? No, but no, they're really nice guys over there. They're really awesome.
So I go to a shop called Quest out in Redlands.
Yeah, I can't walk to that one, homie.
Yeah, that one's. But it's a nice shop.
It is a nice. They're awesome. They're great guys. They're great guys.
They're the example of how you should at least set up your shop. It's the most. Sorry, it's a whole other thing. They're the most customer friendly shop I've been to in a long time.
I think it's really important. Yeah. Like when I was growing up, comic book shops were where you went to escape the stuff. And you could get in conversations and like arguments, but not like, you know, like I'm trying to hurt you kind of arguments. Just like, you know, clearly Boba Fett would beat Snake Eyes, don't at me. So like, you know, you
don't bring this to Twitter.
Yeah, come on, man. Like, it's Boba Fett, get out of here, jetpack. What is he gonna do? How you gonna do jetpack?
There's no logic in Twitter. There's only insults.
Yeah, dude hunts Jedi. Like it's a rap on Snake Eyes. I love Snake Eyes, but come on.
Hey, Snake Eyes doesn't have Cobra Commanders hanging from his belt. That's all I'm saying.
You know, check the scoreboard. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Boba Fett is bringing receipts, dude.
Boba Fett is the only character in all of Star Wars history to talk shit back to Darth Vader and then just walk away. It's like, yo.
You guys are going to find yourselves on a BOF Star Wars satellite show real soon. Rick Shu is on notice.
There you go. Rick Shu, come on, make it come.
He's coming back from Mexico to talk to you guys.
Yeah, I actually donated, and so in my email I just said send the comics to the kids. That's kind of where I was at because I'm gonna buy it
I remember that. That. Yeah.
I don't mean that to be self-serving. I just kind of felt like, man, sometimes I really was thinking like, what would Batman do? Batman, he doesn't do anything in return. It's kind of just to help people. So I hate when people sign up to do things. And then it's like, we'll do things to win an iPad. You know, it's like, man, we should do things to help people. It's a good thing, like, man, to like say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. You guys donate to this great cause. I'm going to send you something back. You know, there is a reward to it. I think it can motivate people. But kind of like what you're saying, as fans of comics, we should I think our heads and our hearts should already be there to like, let's do good just to do good. Like if we look up to these characters, hopefully they inspire us, right? You know?
Right. Yeah. Like one would hope, right? Like that's, you know,
not if you read Twitter.
well, you know, I try to be as positive as I can on Twitter. You know, it's so rare to be able to write these stories, you know, like it's, if you think about all the millions of fans around the world and then the millions of those people that try to become storytellers and for, you know, reasons justified and unjustified, they don't quite get the chance to do it, right? And if you are lucky enough and privileged enough and you know, destiny smiled on you and you get an opportunity to tell these stories, I think it's really important to remember the path you took and give a little bit back whenever you can. You know, it doesn't take that much just to give like a little bit. You know, like if everyone just does a little bit, pays it forward a little bit, the things get better. I mean, it breaks my heart to be on Twitter and just see like a lot of vitriol. You know, like kind of communication by complaint.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna think about what bothers me about the world, and I'm gonna complain about it for an hour, and I'm gonna build momentum that way. I try instead to figure out, well, what can we do? Like, what can we do to make this thing better rather than just talk about why it bothers us?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think Twitter is to jump into a kind of a separate conversation. It's such a powerful tool because it connects people, like it's connected us to you, you know. But at the same time, it can be such a like, man, I don't want to get on there sometimes. And so, what was really great, it was to come across this story. You're jumping on Batman. You're challenging people like, okay, so, you know, kind of put your money where your mouth is and kind of put like this ideology of like loving Batman and being like him. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to be like Batman?
That's a great question. That's a really, really great question. Okay, without turning your podcast into a Charlie Rose episode. So when I was my father died when I was really young. I was about 7 years old. He died of cancer. Right.
Oh man.
And
Sorry.
well, you know, cancer, it happens. But when I was a kid, that day, it was really, really hard for me to process all of that, right? And there was a comic book store across the street from where I was living, and I went to the comic book store, and I walked in. There was a guy named Ernest who ran the comic book store. Really nice guy. Like if you had an action figure of a guy who runs a comic book store, it would have been that guy. And such a nice guy. And I was kind of numb. I mean, I wasn't walking around looking really sad. I was probably still processing. I was just a kid.
Yeah.
But I saw all the comics on the racks. I remember I bought some Captain America. I bought a Captain America. I bought an Action Comics. I think maybe like Bloodshot was on the cover or something. And then I bought a Batman issue. I don't know what it was. It could have been Detective. Could have been Batman. It might have been an issue of Batman Year One. I don't even remember what it was. But the cover was probably Batman Year One, because I think the cover was Bruce in the spotlight with the parents, dead parents, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I feel like that right now. I'm going to read this. So I took that home and I read it. And, you know, you're going through what Bruce Wayne is going through, right? And really, that's when my connection to Batman as a character, you know, started. Because Bruce Wayne was a kid who figured out what to do with the grief and the anger and all that stuff and channeled it into something positive. I mean, I think it's ultimately positive. I mean, Bane would say something different, you know. But, you know, I think it's positive. So like, I've always identified the character with determination, with the ability to face down adversity, with the ability to break down a complex situation into simple steps and achieve the simple steps in order to get a result, right? You know, like, kind of all those things. I still remember bits and pieces of things from Batman comics, you know, like Nightfall.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was, maybe Chuck was writing this one. And there's a point when Batman is, he's climbing across a rooftop. It's late in the Nightfall thing, so he's been locking up all the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about being tired, or like, you know, his like breathing hurts or something, and he takes a moment and he says, I take a breath to think into the pain and through it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I would think about that when I was like lifting weights or playing football or doing martial arts. You know, like those little bits and pieces of living technology, they stick with you when you read them, especially when you're young. You know, like, you start to say, well, maybe that's a thing there. Maybe that's a real philosophy there. And from Batman, I started studying martial arts. And I first started studying martial arts from books, not the moves, but the history.
Yeah.
Because it's the way my mind works, right? So then, you know, I'm like, well, let me go read the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, or let me, you know, read this thing, or Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, whatever it is. And that's how I got into martial arts. And I studied those for 10 years. I mean, I still study a little bit, but I'm not as furious about it as I used to be. But, you know, that entire way, whenever I would encounter adversity, I would think, well, what would Bruce Wayne do? And I would, you know, kind of respond like that, you know? And so knowing that those books gave that gift of, like, living tech to me, I think it's really important that stories give some of that back to people that read them now, right? So in my Batman work, I'm not going to say in all of my work, because, I write a bunch of different things and different, kind of different weapons for different wars. But in my Batman work, I'm trying to make sure that it's not just a tale, but it's a story that has an idea or a series of ideas or theses that a person can say, oh, this is interesting. I might be able to apply this to my life in some way. And hopefully people get a benefit out of it.
That's really awesome because, I think people can approach things as jobs, which you can, but I love that you have this it's actually making me really excited for your run. Because I'll be honest, I've only been able to read a little bit of the Michael Cray stuff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I went back and so I grabbed a couple of issues and I was like, okay, I feel like you're really fresh to me right now. And so I'm loving this kind of idea of, how you're jumping in on this character. And so I love your connection to, I feel like you're, I don't know if you've gone out in the streets and dressed up and pummeled people, but I just feel like this idea of you going all in on Batman's, it's pretty exciting to know where your head has gone and how he has affected you in your life. Because I think, we all love Batman for different reasons. And sometimes it's oh, I just think he looks cool. And then for it to affect you in the way as a little child, kind of giving you this path, that's really exciting to know as a reader.
I was really lucky because as I was growing up and learning, comics were also kind of growing up with me, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was kind of feeling like maybe storytelling was a thing for me, I also wanted to be in the FBI and catch serial killers. That was a thing that I was about. But in the back of my mind, I was like, well, I kind of like stories too. And my mother was like, do the one that doesn't involve you getting shot at.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I guess I'll write the stories. But, so you're reading a bunch of things and you're starting to write your own stuff. You're 15, 16 years old, whatever. But at the same time, you start discovering other works like Arkham Asylum by Morrison and McKean, or you read Dark Knight Returns because now you can kind of get it. Now you sort of understand it. Yeah. Or you reread Year One because now you can kind of get, those elements. The Batman the Cult. You read that. Yeah.
That's a great one.
That it has that line in there, my present reality isn't a pretty sight. It's a thing of anger and delirium. It's hard to think, damn hard, right? So, you remember those things, and as you're building your own relationship to literature, you're also able to read work with the characters you love that escalates the ambition a little bit. And that helped kind of bond me to comics and especially Batman. I mean, Batman's like the Hamlet of comics. If you're an actor, every actor wants to be Hamlet at some point, right? Yeah. I gotta, right. To be or not to be, that is the question, right? It's like they want to do the soliloquy. They want to be that character. Well, I think if you write comics, and I think someone may have said this before, it might have been Scott Snyder, said that every comic book writer has at least one Batman story in them. So when you get an opportunity to write the character, at least for me, it was like, oh, cool, I can access all of this stuff. And so, I can put all this energy into something and be a small part of this legacy that, existed before I was born and will exist after I'm gone.
Did you ever think you were going to get this opportunity?
Nope.
Did this come out of left field? Is this something you approached DC with?
No.
Hey, I've got this story arc, or did they just kind of come to you and say, hey, we want to give you a chance here?
This was the leftist of fields, man. I was in Canada.
Well, congratulations.
I was in Canada and I was working on the Titans television series, right? So sometimes when you write television, they send you to the production to kind of oversee the episodes that you wrote. They don't always do it, but sometimes they do it. In this case, they did. And in my case, the episodes that I wrote were back-to-back in terms of production. So I wound up being in Toronto for about 6 weeks, right? And I was there, just doing all the things you do when you produce a television show. And while I was there, I got an email from Chris Conroy, who was like, hey, Bryan, I'm Chris Conroy. We haven't met, but I'm just wondering if you're interested in doing a 5-issue arc of Detective. And I think I sent an email back, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know you guys had a Detective Comics that didn't have Batman in it. And Chris is like, no, Detective Comics. And I was like, I'm Bryan Hill. You sent it to me? is this the right thing? Because I think someone else gets this email. He's like, no, you want to talk about it. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then the next thing I did was I hopped on the phone with Scott Snyder.
Wow.
Now, Scott has always been super supportive of me, even from like a couple years back. I had an image book called Romulus that I put out a couple years ago. And I was on a panel with Scott, Marjorie Liu. I think Chris Burnham was on that panel. And Scott was super generous and very nice, you know, and I'm sitting there kind of intimidated because you're sitting next to Marjorie Liu and Scott Snyder, and it's like, what am I going to talk about, you know? But he was so cool, man. He's such a awesome guy. And I've been a huge fan of his work since American Vampire.
Okay.
Right.
You know, I love that book, you know, and so getting on the phone with Scott and being able to talk to him about it was great. And he was like, yeah, man, we want you to tell your story. You know, he's like, here's some of the things I'm doing. Here's some things I think could be interesting, but don't feel the need to follow this or follow that. I want you to, you know, to tell the story you want to tell. So I pitched him kind of what was already in my head. And then he was like, well, what about putting Black Lightning in it? And I was like, oh, that's cool. Because you don't want to be too greedy at the buffet, right? You don't want to be like,
Right.
yeah, I'm going to write a Batman story, then we're going to put Dr. Fate in it. And then Dr. Fate, he going to talk to the Green Lantern Corps. Like, you know, you just kind of be like, you know, can I have Alfred? You know, like you know, you want to be like kind of ginger. And he's like, no, you know, I think it would be really interesting if you know, put these two characters together, but, you know, don't feel like you have to box it into something. So I incorporated that and pitched that over to Scott, and he was like, that's cool. And then I talked to Chris and Dave Weigelow's Chris Conroy over at DC, and they were super supportive. And then when I came back from Titans on what's it called, back into Burbank, I talked to Jeff Johns for a second. Because Jeff is like one of the, you know, producer showrunners of Titans, right? So I get to be in a room with Jeff Johns a lot. And I talked to Jeff about it, and Jeff was really supportive because Jeff's been like crazy supportive of me, you know, since the first time I really met him, which was meeting him about working on the show. So I just got all this love, man. I got all this incoming love, you know, and
Dude, you got to play the lottery. Like, it's coming up all you right now.
well, you know, like it really is a bat family over there at DC. Like I give you an example. About 5 days ago, I DM'd Tom King, right, because I had a question, and I was like, hey, Tom, you just followed me on Twitter. So I was like, hey, Tom, got a little bit of a question. You know, whenever you can, shoot me an email, whatever. Dude calls me back in like 3 minutes.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
And he's like on the way to a signing or something, right? Because I know it because I'm seeing him on Twitter. So I know he's on the way to a signing. And he's like, hey, Brian, it's Tom. You know, what's the question? And that's like a really cool thing to do. He doesn't have to do that. Like, he could have not paid attention to it, or he could have waited a week or whatever it was.
He's planning a wedding right now, you know?
Yeah, he's got things to do, man. He's like picking out cakes and you know, fancy china and everything. So to have a guy like of his stature, who's such a brilliant storyteller, whose work kept me in comics when I was feeling burned out. You know, I was, you know, screenwriting was going okay, TV was starting to cook. I was feeling a little burned out on comics, and then I read Sheriff of Babylon, and I was like, whoa, hold on. Like, this is something else. This is something new. You know, who's this guy? And then I read Vision, and I was like,
man.
oh, this guy is real.
Everyone raves about that.
Vision's a really good book.
Yeah, I was
I
like,
have to get on that.
It's like, this is a real. This guy is super real. And then I heard he was doing Batman. It was great. So Tom's work, you know, taught me how you could expand the form and do really cool things on the page, and kind of opened up doors in my mind in terms of my imagination. So to, you know, like a year later, after just reading those books and only knowing the guy through a forward and his stories, to be able to hop on the phone with the guy and ask him a question and get an answer. I mean, that's just a great experience. And when you get so much of that good fortune that comes your way, you know, like doing a little Be Like Batman campaign, or, you know, doing what you can out here, bringing some books over to kids locally in LA or whatever it is, it's an easy thing to do. You know, like it doesn't take much to be that grateful to go ahead and try to give some of it back.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. Like it's really cool to actually see, like you're saying, all the guys in the Bat Office are kind of like a family. It's kind of like the Bat family in the books, where you get to actually see them all work together. Like, a lot of people are so on to Loner Batman, so it's kind of cool when you get to see the teamwork aspect. When you see, like, I love when you get to see like all the Robins and Nightwing and everyone hanging out, and so it's kind of like, you know, life's imitating art a little bit, man. Like,
Well, those ideas are kind of central to the story that I'm telling. You know, the question over the story is, can Batman be Batman with all of these people that he's taking care of that are sharing his legacy?
yeah.
Right? Is that possible? What does he lose by that? What does he gain by that? How is that the evolution of the young man who was dying and he rang the bell and the bat flew through his window? Right?
Yeah.
That sounds great coming out of what we just came out of with Tynan. Like, we just had this huge, big family bat book.
Well, I was also going to say, this is really kind of segues out of what Tynan did and the last issue of No Justice, right? Was that kind of like the setup to what you're doing, Brian?
Well, what I'm doing is going to sort of lead up and go through that moment in No Justice.
Okay.
So temporarily, there's a little bit of a shift because, you know, you kind of want to unpack the events that led up to that moment, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of want to see what goes on right after it. So that's sort of how it lines up in terms of the timeline. But yeah, Tynion did so much work, you know, building out that Bat family and showing them working together and what it all meant, and really spending a lot of time with them. You know, I wanted to take his great work and put it on a skillet and turn the fire as high as I can. You know, and see what happens when you do that. You know, and what that really means. So you know, it's I know evolution. I mean, that's kind of a broad, kind of arrogant thing to say. It's not that, but it's an exploration of what Tynion's doing, filtered through my unique perspective and relationship to the character.
Wow. Is there so let's get into
let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. That's what I'm kind of.
We gonna get into it.
I'm teetering. Okay, so you're bringing Black Lightning in.
Yeah.
Like, there's okay, I'm a huge fan of, like, the show that came on this year.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I've been kind of hot and cold on I call it the DCW because that's
That's pretty good. That's not bad.
Right, I'm like,
that's not bad right there. That thing that's pretty good. Pretty good thing.
There we go. I'm trying to make it happen, dude. I'm trying to make fetch happen. So with those shows, I don't know, man. I think maybe they have like a 4-year life, and then they start to, like, what are we doing? But, like, I really like Black Lightning, and I think it's been the most real of the shows on the CW of those DC shows, because I just don't feel like there's that, I don't know that super saccharine, like, everyone, you know, is dating each other, like, because they don't know what else to do. And I'm not knocking, because I watched the shows, but I just felt like Black Lightning was the one I was like, oh man, that show came in and took everything up a level. And so it's kind of been good to see Black Lightning kind of come back out, because I know he was in the run of Justice League. Oh gosh, but that Meltzer did.
Yeah.
Like way before New 52 and stuff like that. And he kind of pops in here and there. And I actually scored the whole, like, first 12 issues of his 78 series at the beach one time. Someone was selling comics, and I got the whole thing. And I'm like, it's a whole different world. Especially, like, for me, it's a completely different like superhero. And so it's kind of fun to see him pop up and see him kind of get, like, some public recognition, you know, again, because I feel like that show's done really well and doesn't pull any punches, and it's great at culture, and it's great at, like, doing superheroics, and so it's telling a fun story. And so I'm like, good, bring some more attention. And a great way to get some more attention on Black Lightning is having him in a Batman book.
Well, you know, the Black Lightning writers, so all those shows, I think the majority of them, all the writers' rooms were in the same building, right?
Really?
So we're kind of all on top of each other, right? So I see the Black Lightning writers all the time. You know, couple of them are pretty good friends of mine, because we'll have a meal or whatever, or we'll visit each other's floors depending on who's got, you know, the snacks, right? You know, you'd be surprised what a person will do for a chocolate chip granola bar. Let me tell you. So I know they're working incredibly hard over there, and I certainly wanted to honor the work that they're doing. Now, the Jefferson Pierce in my story is a younger Jefferson Pierce. You know,
Okay.
They've got a Jefferson that is a little bit more of a veteran, right? A little, you know, kind of around, been there, done that, doing it again, right?
Yeah.
So my Jefferson is a bit of a younger contemporary, you know, and he doesn't have all that experience that Jefferson has. And what I'm also doing with him is using some of my own experience as an educator. So I went to film school, right? And so I graduated with an incredibly expensive and totally useless degree in New York. And I had to figure out, well, I guess I have to find a way to eat, right? And I could teach English. I could be a substitute teacher without having to go through a lot of the certifications, or I don't even know if I was supposed to not do it or not, but the point of it is they needed one and I could do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I wound up teaching a lot and just kind of going to different precincts, to just fill in for whoever's there. And I would teach English because storytelling is like my thing, so I know how to do that pretty well. And I like introducing, kids to stuff that maybe they haven't done before. Because when you're a sub, you don't have to follow the syllabus. You can come in there and you can talk about, Romeo and Juliet, Troilus and Cressida, Coriolanus, whatever you want to talk about, and just kind of explain it and just, introduce them to a love of like language and literature and what have you. And it's a job you take home, like you've got people that are going through real things. Kids are going through real things, and young people have a terrible ability to hide what they're going through if you're looking. And so you'll see it and you'll take it home with you and you want to help. And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, and there were some kids I think I might have made their lives a little bit better. And there were some kids that I couldn't help as much as I wanted to. And I wanted to put some of that experience into Jefferson. Because the question is, if Bruce is going to bring someone into his world, why would he do that? Right? Yeah. Because Bruce never does anything without playing it out like, a chess move, right? Bobby Fischer, right? That's what he always does. And I thought, well, why would Bruce Wayne reach out to Black Lightning? And I thought, well, Bruce does have a bunch of volatile young people that he's dealing with. Yeah. And for everything Bruce can teach someone, it's very difficult for him to teach someone how to be him. Right? And I think, when he brings Jefferson into his world, it's part of that is he knows that Jefferson knows how to deal with who they are outside of the mission. And that's probably useful for him, right? But the other side of that is, what does Jefferson think about it all? Because if you're a person who wants to protect young people from consequence, you might not agree with all the choices Bruce Wayne has made.
Yeah.
Right? Like the debate that's either been, had and won or had and lost, depending on what side you fall on it, is sort of over until Jefferson shows up and he's like, well, whoa, wait a minute. These are kids, man.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I mean, Batman's world to a person coming in from the outside of it, see what I did there?
Yeah.
I like that.
Is crazy. Right? It's crazy. It's like a crazy world, right? And so I wanted to play all of that out, and I definitely wanted Jefferson to, be the guy who's like, wait a minute, hold on, pause button. This might be totally insane. And I just want to can we table whether or not this is crazy first? So you get some of that there, and I think Bruce wants that. I think Bruce wants someone who will look at what he's doing from a different perspective, who will give these characters a different perspective.
If you're doing a younger Jefferson Pierce, we're talking pre-Lightning and Thunder? Is this early in his career? Are we being reintroduced to a new Black Lightning and Rebirth? Did he get a one-off issue back in, what was it, last summer, I think, when they did this whole Rebirth thing?
I'd rather play that out in the story than answer it here. Okay. But I can say for sure he's going to be a little younger than he is in the show.
I guess my question, and I don't know if you can answer this. Has Batman and Black Lightning had a previous history? Like, was there an outsiders team? Because I'm a little confused on some of the Rebirth history. Like, what's there? What's
of course.
Like, yeah.
Okay, so again, I'm not gonna kind of lay it all out here, but I'll say this much:
by the book, people. Come on now.
Hey, we gotta do it by the book, pal.
Yeah.
So Black Lightning and Batman have worked together. And it may not have gone as well as either would have wanted. So there's some history there. Now, the length, the depth of that history, we're going to kind of see as the rest of this whole year plays out, basically. But they're not strangers for sure, Yeah. It's so I'm engaging a lot of that stuff, and as the story unfolds, you kind of get the idea of what their backstory is. But I'm honestly just way more excited about what they're going to do moving forward.
Oh, see, that's a tease.
Is your story bi-monthly?
What's that?
Is your story bi-monthly? Are we still doing 2 issues a month?
I believe so, because 982 is Michael Morrissey, who's a fantastic writer. And he's doing this really awesome one-shot with Deacon Blackfire, who's one of my favorite villains of the Batman universe.
Okay.
From the Cult, right?
From the Cult, man.
Yeah.
From the Cult. Yeah, so...
Man, that is a honked up story. That's just a honked up story when you start
yeah, I mean,
Jason Todd Robin in that book, like he's still in the little shorty shorts walking around.
Yeah, you know what time it is. It's Batman walking around with a hatchet. Like that's where we are, right?
Yeah.
With the big, like, tall pointy ears.
Oh yeah.
So he's doing that, and I'm really grateful that he is doing that story, because he sort of allows somewhat of a tonal shift in the book, and it kind of lets me kind of build on top of what he's doing. So he's going to do the 982, and I do believe that they're going to be shipping 2 a month here on out, but don't quote me on that, because when it comes to the business behind the writing, I'm so ignorant. I know nothing about anything.
Now, writing a story that ships twice a month, how much pressure is on you as the writer? Like, what are the deadlines like?
Well,
it's got to be pretty crazy for you.
Well, remember, I'm also a screenwriter and a TV writer too. So I'm used to putting in a lot of pages when I go. So when I'm doing something that's like multiple issues, I tend to write them in batches. So I'll do like 3 at a time, if I know I'm going to do a certain amount, I'll probably like kind of bank about 3 of them, and then I'll get notes on the first, and then I'll make the adjustments in the other 2 as I go. But I tend to keep going, because for me, it's easier to do your setups and your payoffs, to layer in things in the story when you sort of write it in a chunk. Because then you can sort of look at all of it and say, oh, you know what? Since I'm doing this thing over here, I can do this thing over here. And I can change this dialogue over here to match this thing over here. So I'm just used to doing things in batches of pages, because a screenplay on average is about 110 pages. Hour-long TV script can be like, 55 pages or like 40-something pages, depending on if you have commercials or not. So I'm used to like writing in big things. So the deadlines aren't really an issue for me. And then also, I write for a living, so I'm lucky enough to not have to have a day job, or I'm not doing anything else. I mean, I can pretty much spend all day working on this stuff, and I work 7 days a week. I don't really go out unless I'm working on a film or, doing like a project of my own. So yeah, the deadline stuff hasn't been so much of an issue, but for me, it's helpful just to write more and write ahead, so you can know where you want to go. Okay.
How long have you been wrapped on this arc?
I'm not fully wrapped yet. Okay. I have, I'm still retweaking the last 2 issues.
Okay.
So I've got first drafts that I wouldn't show, to anybody, but the story is in place. And then the artwork, as the artwork starts to come to me, and you start seeing things like, ooh, you know what? Like, I really like it when Miguel Mendonça does like this, So maybe I can change what I'm doing in this later script to kind of give him more of an opportunity to do this,
What's the communication like between writer and artist?
It probably varies for everyone. For me, I'm as open as I possibly can. I tend to write... I will write a script that will have a lot of visual detail, but I don't expect the artist to follow it. I just like to give them what is in my head so they can do whatever they think they need to do. Right? Okay. It's a collaboration, so you have to be malleable. And in comics, the writing is the easiest thing to change. So I'm always the thing that can bend in the situation, because it's easier for me to change words than it is for someone to change a drawing. But in this case, Miguel has he syncs up so well with how I see that world, that he's doing the things that I would want to do. Like he's not something that I have to kind of work around. I just see, like, oh, that's really awesome. Let's do more of that, or let's do more of that. Like Felipe Briones, I think is his name, is doing one of the issues in the arc, and he just sent me some pages that are incredible.
Great.
So how do you, is that all editorial, is picking your artist, or did you get to have a say on any of this?
In this case, I just said to Chris and Dave, hey, pick who you like for this, because I've been writing a lot of indie comics over the years. Like Postal, I did 25 issues of that, and Romulus for Image, I did Marvel One Shot, and then Michael Cray, which is an indie comic, but it's sort of like an offshoot of main DC. Yeah. I just figured, like, these guys, they know their jobs. And they know my writing, so they already have ideas of who should be in place, and I just followed that, and it worked out beautifully.
Let me ask you a question about a few more just about the run. Is there any other characters you're going to bring in that you can talk about? Or
Well,
that
yeah,
was kinda
sure.
fun
I mean,
to-
one of my goals was to explore Cassandra Cain
Oh, okay, cool.
in some detail.
Oh yes, I love her.
So
She's one of my favorites.
Pete's a huge fan.
Yeah, Cassandra
Cassandra Cain.
gets a lot of playtime. We sort of like the second issue of the arc is where you really see like the Cassandra stuff start to show up in force. But yeah, she's around. Duke gets a lot of playtime in this one. I get to do some things with him that are kind of stark and might make people feel a way. But if they trust me, then
Oh, okay. Oh, dang. Okay.
Okay.
they make it to the end. I know what I'm doing. And some other people pop in here and there, but if you've got Bruce, Batman, Black Lightning, Cassandra, Duke, there's a little bit of Alfred going on in this book too. That's already a lot of characters. So I don't want to just have someone like pop their head in and wave.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I don't think that really helps very much. So I'd rather really serve the characters that I have that are critical to story, because I also have a new villain in this story that I created. So I've got to make sure that
nice.
I got to make sure that villain's got some time to do villain things, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, people are going to show up, and when they show up, it's probably going to be in an unexpected way, and I'm looking forward to seeing how people react to that.
Oh, that's cool. Because you think like the Batman family, it's such a big. It used to just be it's Robin and Batgirl, but yet now it's expanded, and so you get characters like Duke, and we're still calling him the Signal, right? Like his little like series ended, and he's just kind of now he's like Morning Batman, and so you got
bright and yellow.
You got Cassandra, and so it's kind of like, man, well, who's gonna show up now? And I'm not asking you to spoil anything, so it is kind of cool. It's not what you used to think with the Batman family is. I actually really like it. I really like Batman's like extended family because they all bring out different aspects of who he is. So
yeah, and in this case, I'm kind of an intense storyteller, right? Like I mean, people have told me that. I don't think about myself that way, but that's the response I get a lot. That my stories tend to be kind of intense.
I'm looking forward to this.
So for this story, I kind of wanted to hold on to the intense characters.
good.
The ones that were kind of fierce, the furnaces in that story, and kind of ratchet up those emotions, and it's a little more brutal than I think previous stories have been. It's certainly got you can see the Nolan influence in it. You can see some Burton influence in it. You can see some Batman the Animated Series, stuff in there. Some of the stuff. I was a Legends of the Dark Knight kid, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
So that's kind of the feel of it. Like it's definitely like it like that's the kind of vibe that I've got with Batman.
Like that gothic old city type vibe.
Yeah, it's not so gothic, but just that opera, like the dark opera of Batman.
Yes, okay, I see it.
Like one of the rules one of the things I asked Miguel and Felipe is, I'm like, listen, one, Batman must never smile in the Batsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Right.
Oh man, this has been a topic of debate.
That's the thing for me. I'm
For
sorry.
Justice League killed us recently with that smiling Batfleck.
Like I don't like a smiling Batman in the suit. And the second is, I told the artist, listen, Batman doesn't always have to have his own key light. Don't feel the need to fully illuminate Batman in every panel because he is the best silhouette in all of popular culture.
Yeah. Right.
You speak to me.
So use that, right? Like, 'cause I feel like when Batman shows up in the story, sometimes it's good to see Batman from someone else's point of view.
Yeah.
And the animated series was great about that, right? Like you would get the Bruce stuff, and it would be really awesome. But then when Batman would show up, sometimes you'd get Batman from someone else's point of view, and you remember the reason why he's dressed up like a bat.
Yeah.
As he just walks out of that shadow in like the corner.
Yeah, you remember like why he chose this method to do what he's doing. Like one of the questions of the arc is Batman becoming too familiar to Gotham? Are they too comfortable with him, and is it making it difficult for him to be Batman because of that, right? Like, and you have a villain that's challenging him in that way. you know, and it's really about a bunch of that stuff. So those are the kind of things that I'm using as influences on me. A lot of Scott's work too, like Court of Owls, you know, Death of the Family, you know, like that stuff as well is a huge influence. So yeah, like that. I mean, that, look, everyone sees Batman differently. That's how I see Batman.
It's funny you say that because I literally turned on an episode of Batman 66 this afternoon and just watched it. You know, it's just 20 minutes, and I said to my girlfriend, I was like, it's just weird seeing Batman out in the public, you know, in the brightness of the daytime and everything, people coming up to him and interacting with him. So hearing what you're saying, just like this Batman in like the shadows and the dark, and it just kind of like, is Gotham too familiar with him? Like, I'm really intrigued now. I'm really excited for this.
Well, you know, like I like the old show for what it is. I mean, on its own terms, it does its own thing.
Yes.
But for me, Batman is a story about fear.
Yeah.
Right? Bruce Wayne is a character that mastered his own fear. And he turned his fear into a strategy that he could use to wield fear against the other things in Gotham that terrorize people. Right? And I think if you take the fear out of Batman, then it's different than how I see it.
Yeah.
It's like in Begins, doesn't he say, like, I use fear for those who prey on the fearful? It's like something like that.
Yeah, I mean, everything in
They want
Batman
him to feel
Begins.
dread.
Everything is
Like,
about
my
fear.
favorite, so what, as you're talking about, like, you know, the cool entrances of Batman in silhouettes and just when he appears, when he first engages those guys on the dock and he's upside down and he's just like, here.
Yeah.
Oh man, that like anybody here, and here's it's like the challenge for
That fight
anybody
scene's
writing
underrated
Batman.
too.
If you're gonna write Batman or you're gonna put him in a movie, there's so many different ways you can have him emerge and like it just have that awesome silhouette. And even in Burton, like when he first rises down, he just opens his cape up and just those two thugs on the building.
Well, and
like,
it's not
those
just
are awesome scenes.
It's not just like aesthetic; it's also strategic. You know, like to me, the reason why Bruce does things like that is he has to break the momentum of his opponents. Yeah. So when his opponents have automatic weapons, when they're terrorizing things, when they've got all of the momentum of terror and violence on their side, it's that opera that breaks that in half and turns the tide of that moment. That's why he does it, right?
Yeah.
Because he has to remind these people of when they were afraid.
Yeah.
And that gives him the advantage that he can use to disarm them and handle the situation. So I do think about things like that tactically.
Yeah. What?
Okay. Wow, that's
one of the
great.
things that I like. I've argued this with one of the guys on the show, Rick. Like we kind of had this back and forth about Batman coexisting with other heroes and whatnot. But one of my points is it doesn't matter if Superman exists. People aren't scared of Superman. They're scared of Batman.
It doesn't matter who we are, all that matters is our plan!
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I heard Brian does an amazing Bane impression, and
I
Justin
know.
likes his as well. So
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping
Dude,
you guys could Bane off.
The trick to the Bane voice is a well-placed cup over the mouth.
You must have a well-placed cup over your mouth, and the breath must be difficult. I am the League of Shadows!
This is tremendous. I love it. Oh man, I was kind of hoping I could save this for the end, but I'm so glad you did it now.
Yeah, no, it really irritates my wife when I do it.
Oh man!
I also saw the mask you posted on Twitter. It looks great.
Oh yeah, I wore that to the Titans Halloween party. I mean, I had a shirt at the Halloween party. I was wearing a shirt, but because they were like, "Oh, you're gonna dress up? You're gonna dress up?" I'm like, "Well, I got a Bane mask I wear for fun. I guess I'll bring that in."
Bane doesn't wear a mask. Or a shirt, does he?
It would be very painful!
Oh man, that's great.
Wearing a shirt can be extremely painful.
I mean, you should see me when I'm writing the story, like because I have.
You're writing Bane voice?
Well, I don't write in Bane voice, but I do act out the villain before I type the script.
That's good.
Oh,
So
that's
I
great.
like walk around my office and I'm like, oh yes, Batman, and I'm like, oh yeah,
You're a true thespian.
like we're getting there. It's getting there. Do you think you control fear? And I'm like, okay, yeah. We're starting to get there. So I like to like kind of. I walk around and do like Bruce Wayne dialogue to my. I'm a mess.
That's good.
I'm what happens when
Do you sell tickets to this? Can I watch?
when
Your live stream.
when adolescence goes unchecked. That's what happens. I'm the result of that.
There you go.
Amazing.
Is your wife there while you're working? Like, what is going on?
She's learned to ignore me by now. Like, if I'm running past her with a bed sheet jumping over the couch, she's just like, nah, whatever, man, whatever.
This is research. It pays the
Hey,
rent.
yeah, hey, Batman. Do the dishes before you go to sleep, Batman.
And I was like, okay. My wife doesn't actually sound like, like
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, like Joe Pesci. It's just, for the joke, I had to put a voice on it, so
Yeah.
It worked.
She
Oh man.
she has a lovely voice.
Oh God, it never ends. I love it.
That's hilarious. So I was gonna ask you, like, again, man, I feel like I gotta keep dancing around, like
Dancing.
everything you're saying.
We dancing
you're
now.
Saying, right? I'm dancing, dude, because I know there's things you can't say, but one of the things I was just thinking, because sometimes this happened. How cool would it be, your character that you bring into detective, if people are like, man, that's a rad character. Let's put him on Black Lightning season 2. How awesome would that be?
Oh yeah, that could actually be pretty cool. I mean, you don't think about things like that while you're doing it, but you always hope that you leave the house better than when you found it, right?
Yeah, it's always kind of cool to add something to the lore,
like
you know?
if I can come up with a cool character that some other writers think that, hey, this character's actually kind of interesting, maybe we can use this character somewhere else. I mean, there's no greater honor, right?
Yeah, well, because I was, his villain well isn't super deep, and so if there's something that comes out, let's bring him. Because I know Kevin Smith did Onomatopoeia, and they brought him into, I think they brought him into Arrow, and so there's just, you never know, like when you can add something and you don't even know, like, oh man.
Well, that's actually a consideration in the story, right? Because part of what Jefferson is wary of is getting Bruce's world on him.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Like, he might have been warned by someone else in Metropolis that people tend to look up to, that Bruce has more assets than friends.
Okay.
And I think he keeps that in mind, and when you work with him, you also get his world on you, and that world can stay on you, right? So,
Gotcha.
You might start to make yourself a clarion call to the wrong kind of people out there, and there's a price that's paid for that. And so I would love the opportunity to explore what that means for Jefferson, in future stories.
Nice. You might get some of that Batman on you, like, hey man,
Yeah, man. Oh, look. Ooh, you got some Batman on you, homie.
get some guano. Hey.
Oh God.
All right. All right. So I'm gonna. You talked about Titans. What can you tell us about Titans?
It's a TV show with Titans in it.
There you go.
How good does Grayson's suit look? Does the suit look good at least? Just can you say yes or no on that?
We saw the image, right? You've seen the image, right?
I haven't seen a Dick Grayson suit.
Yeah, you haven't seen the
Isn't
Robin
that-
suit picture? That came out like
The Robin picture's been on the internet, so yeah, it looks cool. It looks like that. It looks cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious how it looked like in motion.
Well, I mean, I can say that Brenton Thwaites, who's playing Dick Grayson, is doing a great job. Like, he's fantastic.
Okay.
Really
Okay, that's
really
good.
cool guy, man. Like a really soulful cat. So he's just an interesting actor in a lot of ways. And I'm really excited for people to see what he does.
Nice. I'm excited for all these shows that they're gonna be putting out on this app. I'm like, they're putting work in, man. The stuff that they're talking.
Yeah,
like,
put that work in, homie.
Right? Well, we're gonna get Swamp Thing. Like, I remember the old Swamp Thing show that kind of spun out of those movies. Like, I'm like, all right, this looks like it's stepping it up. And you just got a title like card, but you're like, all right, I'm trusting everything that's like coming out.
Well,
like,
my friend Mark Verheiden is running that show, and I met
is he?
I
Okay.
met Mark when I was writing Ash vs. Evil Dead season 3, because Mark was the showrunner of that season. And Mark is just one of the nicest and most talented writers I've ever been in a room with. Like, he's just a fantastic guy. He wrote, a lot of the really moving episodes of Battlestar Galactica. He worked on Daredevil. So whatever Mark does, I know is going to be really, really brilliant, because he's so invested into not only comics but also horror. And I don't know what they're doing over there, but I'm really excited for it, because I think Mark is the perfect fit for something like that.
Nice. Dude. Yeah, I hope that thing like just takes off, that whole app. I mean, it can't not, man. I'm like, Titans Swamp Thing. We got Doom Patrol.
And there's
coming
the
out.
Harley Quinn show on there too.
Yeah, that's the animated. There's 2 animated deals they're kicking it off with. So, yeah, I'm excited for that. Hopefully, the more information that comes out, I'm just curious about price point on that thing. I'm like, what's the price going to be on that for me?
Yeah, I don't know anything about anything, man. Like I think it might be Sunday. But when the show's out and people have watched it and I can actually talk about some stuff, I'm happy to come back on and talk about it.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, again, I was really hoping for what you just said. That's good. Yeah, like that's enough of like, hey man, I'm excited. So okay, I wanted to do kind of a lightning round with you.
Cool.
So, favorite Batman film?
Favorite?
Yeah, you got to do your favorite. Your favorite. This is Batman on film, so we got to know your favorite Batman film.
Favorite is Batman '89. I think the best film.
That's great. Yeah.
The best film was The Dark Knight, but favorite is Batman '89.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I'm Batman Begins for like the best. It goes back and forth, man. It depends on what way the wind blows.
You know what? I
hit me.
I love Begins.
Begins is so underrated.
I love Begins, but that Heath Ledger performance is. I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know. Like, I remember being in a theater, and I was a little bit of like, Doubting Thomas, like, I had seen the image on the internet and I was like, oh, was he the Crow? I don't know about that. And then, like, I saw the Heat thing at the beginning with the bank robbery and I was like, yeah, okay. And then, they did that gangster meetup scene with Michael Jai White and everybody, and he just comes in like, oh,
yeah.
I was like, oh, this isn't. I'm terrified and fascinated. It's such a loss, Heath Ledger, because I literally don't know how you. I mean, I've directed some stuff before. I work with actors a lot. I don't know how you get that performance out of somebody. I don't know how that happens. So I love Batman Begins, and I like Dark Knight. I mean, Dark Knight Rises more than a lot of people do, but The Dark Knight is one of those movies where I'm like, I don't know how to do that at all, and that so that's why I kind of rank it, because some of it is just mystifying to me.
Gotcha. All right, that's a good answer. All right, favorite Batmobile.
Ooh,
yeah.
Probably '89 Batman, man.
Dude, where have you been all my life, man?
I mean, the shields, right? Like, come on.
Right.
It has a hook just so he can turn.
Yes, it does. It's great. It's great.
That's so 66, that thing, that hook.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna install a hook here because I know at some point I'm gonna be taking a turn really fast near a street light, and I've got a hook. Do you know what my favorite upgrade to the Batmobile is?
What's that?
It's the flashlight over his head that will blind you so you can't see his Michael Keaton face.
Yes, that's great.
He's like, Alfred, we gotta install that.
That should come standard in every car.
Right.
You're just driving your car, somebody's talking some shit, you're like, you know what? Click.
Blinded by the light.
Look forward now.
Just batlight somebody.
So,
that needs to be. That's a new.
Right? Come on.
Dude, you got to add that. You got to add that somewhere. Hey, I'm gonna batlight you.
So, what's your favorite bat suit? Cinematic bat suit?
Oh, I like the Dark Knight bat suit the best.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, you like the puzzle piece?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean,
the armored plates.
The Keaton suits were cool, but he couldn't move his head.
Mm-hmm.
And the return suit is interesting, but looks a little, I don't know, a little too techy in a weird way for me. But I think the Dark Knight suit as a suit is my favorite Batman suit. But it's also physique too, right? I think Bale's physique in that movie feels the most Batman to me, because he's not like big Frank Miller big, even though I get that and I like it on the page. But he's a ninja, right? So like Bale's physique is like a ninja's physique.
Gotcha. Yeah, he was a lot leaner in Dark Knight over Begins too.
Oh yeah, he's huge in Begins.
Well, it Begins. He what did they do? They called him Fat Man. He gained too much weight.
Yeah, Bale has that great anecdotal story about that. Like, oh, hey, Christian, you're eating too much for playing the Batman. I'm gonna call you Fat Man now.
He does look really big when he's getting like beat on those singular pillars by like Roz and his guys. So he does look pretty big in the beginning of the movie.
But I did try to get up and do push-ups like him, and almost broke my nose.
After that movie, got really inspired to do push-ups, and I really did it. Like I did a couple before I went to bed. I did a couple, and I was like, wow, man, like I can't be Batman. I can't do push-ups. This isn't gonna work.
And we'll throw one more out there. Who's your favorite Robin?
Like as like characters or like actors, or what are we talking?
Let's do character like in the comics.
Oh,
We've only had one in
Well, two, John Blake.
John Blake.
Justin doesn't like John Blake.
I'm not a John Blake fan, so we'll just stick to the pages.
I guess Dick Grayson, man. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Grayson's mine too. I'm a big Dick Grayson fan.
Yeah, I think I'm Drake. I like Dick Grayson a lot. I think I like him better as Nightwing though. But I don't think I read many stories with him as Robin. Like
I
by the time
crave
was
Dick
in
Grayson
there-
Robin stories because I never read that many.
Yeah, I mean, he was just Robin most of the time when I was a kid. You know, I mean, and like Jason Todd came in. I didn't dislike Jason Todd, but I guess if you ask me who Robin is, Dick Grayson is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think especially when you go to other media, we haven't had a good chance to spend with him in other media, other than like the animated series. Like that's so you get Grayson and they go.
Oh, but
Drake,
you
so
will.
I would agree.
You'll have some time to spend with him very soon.
There we go. See that's what I wanted. I wanted a lot of that.
See what I did there? I brought her back around. See what you did? Started up here, and I brought it right back around to it. That's comedy, folks. That's how you do it.
There you go, man. And you probably you had those threads going. You're like, I'm gonna pull those at the end of this because that's what a writer does, man.
Yeah, you know, you gotta do the whole thing, man.
You've been controlling this from the beginning.
I'm here all night, folks. I'm at the Copacabana from Friday to Monday, and then I'll be at the Sands that following weekend.
That's funny. All right, so man, Bryan Edward Hill, I am so glad you came on the show. This was a good time.
This was a fun one.
I'm happy to be here, Ben. Thank you so much for making me part of your BOF legacy.
Yeah, man, 20 years, and you were the first guest right after. So as we work towards 21, dude, you're like day one.
That's awesome, man.
That's pretty awesome. So how can people find you on the internets?
Well, on the internet, you can find me on Twitter, which is where I do most of my communication.
Yeah.
So it's just
You're a fun guy to follow too.
it's easy. It's just at Bryan Edward Hill, Bryan with the Y, on Twitter, and my DMs are open, so you can just ask me a question if you have like a question you don't want on the timeline. If it's a writing question, I would prefer you ask me on the timeline so everyone who follows me can get the answer. But yeah, that's the best place to find me online. I don't really do the Facebook thing. I have an Instagram, but that's more of like a filmmaking Instagram, so it doesn't really have much writing stuff there.
Yeah, I saw there's a lot of photography and stuff that you
Yeah. I mean, that's my other thing. It's my other
cool.
passion. So like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna directing a music video later on this year and doing some stuff. But like, yeah, Twitter is the best place to find me. And you know, read my stuff. Ask me a question about it, and I'm happy to answer it. If you got questions about how to get a career started in entertainment, I will answer it to the best of my ability. I just ask that everyone be polite on my timeline because I got people from the left, I got people from the right, I got people from the center, up and down, and we all get along here.
There you go.
You know, so I don't like unnecessary arguments. But if you're friendly, then you're more than welcome, and I'm happy to engage on any topic.
Cool. Awesome. I'm so glad that you were able to come on the show with us today. It was a good time hanging out. Just like the Batman writers room, you were part of the Batman on Film family. So there you go.
Awesome.
So yeah, when Titans comes out, we'll have you back.
Yeah, man.
That'd be fun to talk about that. And on the wrap up of this detective run, we'll do a kind of a.
Oh yeah. I'd love to do that.
We'll do like some.
I'm pumped to finally see the run.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think Batman fans, like I said on Twitter, you know, I get it. Like, who the hell is this Bryan Hill guy? But you know, if you're a fan of Batman, like I'm a fan of Batman, then I think I've got a really good experience on the way for you. You're gonna really enjoy it. Batman might not.
All right. So that being said, we're gonna close the show out. Pete, you want to tell people how they can find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Pete Illustrated, or you can follow me on Instagram at Peter_Illustrated, and we can talk about just some Bat stuff.
Yeah, and always check out Pete's reviews of Detective Comics on BatmanOnFilm.com. You can do that every week. Pete is dropping just knowledge all over the place about Detective Comics. You can follow me on Twitter at J_Rocca, and you can follow Batman on Film at Batman on Film on Twitter. That's where Bill is posting all his thoughts and comments. So, and give Bill congratulations if you can. Head over and say, congrats, Bill, on starting Batman on Film 20 years ago.
Banging the drum.
20 years ago, I was probably like buying tacos. I don't have any recollection of what was going on.
Southern California.
Is that that's your default character animation in the video game?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just go get a taco.
If I don't touch the thumbstick, you just start buying tacos.
There you go. 20 years ago, I was just like, 19-year-old kid, just
Eating
trying to
tacos.
figure out life, eating tacos. Like, maybe I'll buy a comic. Maybe I'll just buy a taco. I don't know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Man.
There you go, man.
The hard choices of life.
The hard choices of life. So, everybody, thank you for listening to Batman on Film. Authoritative, definitive, the original Batman on Film. Announcer Rachel will take us out.
Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jet on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jet via jet@batman-on-film.com. For Jet, Rick, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.